The city of confusion is breaking down. As this video goes into.
Alright, Shalom and Barakatham, peace and blessings. I want to give all praises, if in honor and glory, to the God of heaven and earth, whose name is Yahweh, and his beloved Son, our Lord and Savior, our Governor, whose name is Yahweh Shai. So all praises be to the Most High God, Yahweh, and his Son, Yahweh Shai. I wanted to speak on the spirit of confusion that's in Babylon the Great today, which is America, prophesied in the scriptures throughout the Bible and in the book of Revelation, most notably, that's going to be destroyed. So Babylon, the land of confusion, right, is in the spirit of confusion, and the Trump exhaustion syndrome has hit Babylon. It can only go down from here. And this article, the Trump exhaustion syndrome, just dropped today a little earlier. It's from The Atlantic, and it really just speaks about how Edomites have buyer's remorse, and even some of you ninjas and you cold out, rejects amongst our people who actually believe in this guy, the 45th and the 47th, right, as he's known. So here we go. It's dated today, January 20th, 2026. It says, among the greatest tricks Donald Trump ever pulled is convincing significant portions of the population that the slow erosion of their rights is now actually, it says, that big of a deal. It's not actually that big of a deal. After all, do undocumented immigrants with purported gang tattoos truly deserve due process? Is it really so bad to urge citizens to turn on their neighbors and co-workers for saying something outrageous? And is it problematic to punish journalists for reporting facts that the government would rather keep hidden? Yes, yes, and yes. Come the empathic cries of the constitutional law experts, civil liberties advocates, and others who care about this sort of thing. It goes on to say, a year into Trump's second term, the emboldened president, maximalist strategy, pushing every norm to its most elastic and then a bit beyond, and from the new breaking point, pushing yet again, conjures the boiling frog theory, in which a frog placed in the boiling water will immediately hop out, but a frog placed in cool water that is slowly heated, it says will complacently boil to death. Now, this just touches on this article here. That was just a little snippet of it. It just dropped today. Speaking
Three
of Trump,
frogs coming out. Yeah.
His buyer's remorse ain't going to change the actual judgment that's coming to Babylon the Great or America. Now, also, in the midst of all of what's going on, and I speak on my page, on my sit-down lessons about it all the time, the times that we're in. And this is just another volume of that. And this is from NPR.org. It says Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act. He's been talking about this now. It's been spoken about now for about the last week. Trump, it says, to invoke the Insurrection Act again. What is it? Now it goes on to say, President Trump on Thursday threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act to suppress protests in Minnesota a week after an immigration and customs enforcement agent fatally shot a 37-year-old Minneapolis woman. The shooting death of Renee, it says, Macklin Good sparked protests nationwide against ISIS. Continued presence in Minnesota and across the United States. Protests were further, it says, incensed on Wednesday evening when ISIS in Minneapolis shot a Venezuelan immigrant.
I won't call them ICE. They're ISIS. Arrest.
Now, Trump says this on Truth Social, the social media platform. If the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ISIS, who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, in all caps, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that has taken place in that once great state. So, with all this going on, and it's a tailspin in the whirlwind, because the spirit of the Most High... Whirlwind!
Didn't I just use that in yesterday's title? Think about it. That's the spirit.
The spirit of confusion. So let's show that. Let's start there. This is the book of Isaiah 24. That's what Babylon brings. The byproduct of Babylon is confusion. So this is the book of Isaiah 24. In verse 10, it says, the city of confusion is broken down. Now that word city goes into a place where citizens or people of a certain populace live. So a city, when you read in the scriptures, could be a literal city or place, but Babylon is referred to as a great city in the book of Revelation. So that great city was a group of citizens, a population of people. So it says the city of confusion is broken down, and we're witnessing Babylon, go into chaos, disintegrating, right? Just falling apart. The city of confusion is broken down. Every house is shut up that no man may come in. That's why also they're trying to put up, the border walls on the border and keep out people out the country, so on and so forth. So this is all a part of prophecy.
Also, keep people locked in.
There is a crying for wine in the streets. So the truth really is what the men of the Lord are doing. They're crying out because truth is what is missing in this land and in this earth. There's a crying for wine in the streets, and this crying for wine is going to grow more and more. Right? Which are the facts? What is truth? Who is God dealing with? What is about to happen? The men of the Lord are the ones that have been gifted with the gift of prophecy, the men that are crying out in the streets. There's a crying for wine in the streets. All joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone. So the mirth of the land is gone. This place is losing more and more of this mirth. Only thing left is for this football and basketball and all that to go, and the concerts and all the partying, and then we're going to see the spirit that people are truly going to be in. So it says, it's brought this to mind. It says, the mirth of the land is gone. All the joy is darkened. So now people might not
color it blacken
as of right now, but that's happening through the process of gradualism, I always speak on.
Yep,
That's
paint it black.
gradually, not all of a sudden or at once. That's not how the Most High moves. Ecclesiastes 12:3, it says, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, this will be the people over the stock market, the top investors, right? These people. And the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few. So work is about to cease. Slowly but surely, you're seeing tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people in jobs not being created, but being lost more than created. So that proves that grinding is ceasing because they are few, and those that look out the windows be darkened. There we go. So those that look out the windows be darkened. Once again, Isaiah 24:11. There's a crying for wine in the streets. It says, all joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone. So it says in the NLT, mobs gather in the streets, which that's soon to come, right? Crying out for wine. Now you have people we just read about that are actually in all throughout the nation going to the streets. And that's going to happen more and more when this economy completely shuts down. People are going to be looking for answers. And the answers are with the men of the Lord, who the Most High has put the Spirit, within them and His words in their mouth to tell the truth. Back in the NLT, mobs gather in the streets, Isaiah 24:11. It says, crying out for wine. Joy has turned to gloom. Gladness has been banished from the land. So all this fun and mirth, which the Lord says we're supposed to be in the spirit of mourning rather than the spirit of mirth, meaning being serious and sober-minded, taking the actual truth not for granted, actually looking into the things that the men of the Lord are saying. Because Babylon is falling apart. And the reason why is because it's not established on truth when you read in Hosea, the 4th chapter. Start at the first verse. Right? It's not established in truth. So this place is falling apart. And the pride of this place is going to be its doom. This place is going out in destruction because of the pride. Now let's show that. This is the book of Ecclesiastes 10. In verse 1, it says, a wise judge will instruct his people, and the government of a prudent man is well ordered. So we see Babylon's in chaos. So there's not a prudent man running this country, headed by Donald Trump and the shadow government, which will be the elites, the Illuminati as they're known. Verse 2, as the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers. And what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all they that dwell therein. So that's why Babylon is in chaos, and the people are in chaos and confusion as well, because this is the land of confusion. So therefore the spirit of confusion, consists very greatly here in America. An unwise king destroyed his people. That's why this place is going down the drains, because there's an unwise king ruling this place. But through the prudence of them which are in authority, the city shall be inhabited. So Esau, Edom, the man of sin, is who's ruling the world, for that matter. When you read Job 9:24, it tells us that the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. It says the power of the earth is in the hand of the outer one. So ultimately, this is the will of the Most High, or the Lord. And in due time, He will set over it one that is profitable, because we clearly see that Esau, the man of sin, has not been profitable in the earth. And we'll touch on that even further. As a matter of fact, I'll just go ahead and get it. Why has this man not been profitable in the earth? This is the book of Revelation, the 11th chapter. Since it's on my mind, I'll go ahead and get it. Why has this man not been a prophet to the earth? The Most High is going to set up one that is profitable. Revelation 11:18, the nations were angry, and thy wrath has come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged. These nations are actually awakening and coming against Babylon the Great, America. All right, you got the EU, the beast system, EU and NATO breaking off. So the European Union is saying, hey, we got to defend ourselves against these Babylonians, right? These Americans. And then wanting to defend themselves, that's the chief ally of Babylon, of America. And this prophecy in Revelation 17, that they would turn on Babylon. And we're seeing that coming to pass right before our eyes. So we're in a time of great prophecy for those whose eyes are open. And the nations were angry, and thy wrath has come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants, the prophets, and to the saints and to them that fear thy name. So the believers are going to be rewarded, small and great, and shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. So the man that's destroyed the earth, that caused the earth to tremble, as you read in Isaiah the 14th chapter, that man is who the Most High is going to destroy, because he's ruling the earth. And he's doing that in great wickedness. Back in Ecclesiastes 10:4 again, the power of the earth is in the hand of the Adawan of the Lord, and in due time he will set over it one that is profitable. So clearly Esau is not profitable to the earth. Verse 5, in the hand of the Adawan, or the Lord Yahweh, is the prosperity of man, and upon the person of the scribe shall he lay his honor. Now we'll keep going down to verse 7. It says, pride is hateful before God and man, and by both doth one commit iniquity. So the Most High hates pride. He's letting it be known. Pride is hateful before the Most High God. And this man is most proud. And he's most proud because of the things that he's doing, the things that he's saying, the mind that they have, the way that they don't even consider their own allies. That's great pride. 2nd Ezra 8 and verse 50, it says, for many great miseries shall be done to them that in the latter time, and we are in the latter time, the last, days, the end of time, before the destruction, shall dwell in the world, because they have walked in great pride. So because of great pride, destruction has to come. So the Most High is going to destroy them that have walked in great pride. And there's no more proud man than Esau when you read in the scriptures. There's no more proud person on the earth. The Most High created him to be, to be proud. And with that pride is great wickedness, right? So Esau has destroyed the earth in its own wickedness and immorality, godlessness, debauchery, the freedom to be a weirdo because he's a weirdo. That's the spirit he's pushed. He's given religion to the earth, and he hasn't, sown truth in the earth. And he refuses to do that because Esau is like a petulant child left to his own devices. This is the book of Proverbs, the 29th chapter. Let's show that. The scriptures support that Esau is like a petulant child left to his own devices. This is the book of Isaiah or Salakia, Proverbs 29 and verse 15. Let's start at verse 14. It says, the king that faithfully judgeth the poor, his throne shall be established forever. And this man clearly hasn't faithfully judged the poor of the earth being the Israelites. Continuing on, Proverbs 29 and 15, and the point, the rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame. So it says, the rod and reproof giveth wisdom, and this man is not doing it with wisdom. But a child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame. So Esau is likened unto a child left to his own devices. It kind of reminds me of the movies, brothers and sisters, that, are at least, even those that might be in the 20s know about the movies, but definitely in your 30s and 40s, Home Alone.
Yep.
Macaulay Culkin. Home Alone was those crazy movies we used to watch when we were 8, 9, 10, about this child that was left home, and how he defended intruders and set all these traps, and it was kind of like cool. Well, Esau is got the same mind of that child that's left to his own devices, so to speak, right? He's left to himself. So now let's show you that Esau, the man of sin, the European, the Caucasian, the so-called white man today, is likened unto a child. Let's show that. And a fool. This is the book of Job, the 30th chapter, and the first verse. It says, but now they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to have set with the dogs of my flock. So Job said he didn't even want the Edomites to be around his dogs when we continue to read. And this is going to make it clear he's talking about...
And look at the things that Esau does to dogs. I mean, he poisons their food, etc. He abuses them. I see that all the time, every day.
Who might the strength of their hands profit me? It says, in whom old age was perished. For want and famine, they were solitary. Job is speaking of the history of the Edomites, right? Leaving the area today in the country of Jordan, which was where the Caucasus, or the, Salakia, where Petra was at, initially where the Edomites were, right? For want and famine, they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness. They went further into the wilderness. He's telling you their journey, how the Edomites got up into the Caucasus Mountains. Fleeing into the wilderness in former times, desolate and waste, who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. They were driven from among men. They cried after them, it says, after a thief. So they went complete solitary when they went up into the Caucasus Mountains. Nobody was going up into the Caucasus Mountains, right? Verse 6, to dwell in the clefts of the valley, in the caves of the earth, and in the rocks. It says the same thing in the book of Obadiah in explaining the Edomites. So the Edomites would dwell in the clefts of the valleys, in the caves of the earth, in the Caucasus Mountains, right? And in the rocks. Verse 7, among the bushes they brayed, under the needles they were gathered together. Now that braying is the sounds that animals make, horses and other animals. In the NLT it says, Job 30:7, they sound like animals howling among the bushes, huddled together beneath the needles. So that would be them out making the fires, right? They huddled together, making those weird noises. And they were making those noises because they became uncivilized. That's the caveman. Esau is the scientific Neanderthal. He's truly the caveman when you see those depictions.
And Caucasian means cave dweller.
Verse 8, they were children of fools. Now we just read here before in Proverbs 29, it says, but a child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame. Job 30:7 or Job 30:8, they were children of fools, so the Edomites are children of fools. They're also known as the sons of the wicked. They were children of fools, yea, children of base men. They were viler than the earth. So they are the base men of the earth, that it says in the book of Daniel, the 4th chapter, the 17th verse, that the Most High set up over all the people on earth. The Most High set this man up to rule here in the last days. So the spirit of confusion in Babylon and Trump exhaustion syndrome, well, hey, this is just the beginning. The Most High is about to bring this place down, and he's going to bring down all you jakes that refuse to return and repent by coming back and serving him according to his word. I want to give all praises and the honor and glory to the God of heaven and earth, whose name is Yahweh, and his beloved Son, whose name is Yahweh Shai, our Lord and Savior, our Governor, who sooner return and deliver the elect. Honors be to the elect elders of the nation of Israel, the Rakim La, Habayah, Madabada, blessings to the house of David, and to you, Akim, Wahagwa, brothers and sisters that also listen and believe in the glorious gospel being preached. And to you, I say Shalom, and peace and blessings from Yah, always, Wa Lakwatazah, and unto the end, Wa Ayalam, and forever.
So, like everything else, though, the city of confusion is broken down. And, hey, been talking about it for some time. Now you see it printed, right? You know? Hey, I talked about this on the streets, man. Bipartisan FY 26 minibus released as 30th January shutdown approaches. So, see, going into another shutdown. I said, get your house prepared. You know, I mean, we've been telling you, get your house prepared because they're going to cut it off again. And cut off a lot of things during the shutdown. They already showed that he could, right? Now, will they kick the can down the road? They're trying to do some preliminary stuff, but like everything else, a shutdown is approaching. It seems that Congress may bypass our regularly scheduled shutdown drama as House appropriators release the text of the Consolidated Appropriates Act 2026 early Monday, making a significant step toward completing all 12 annual spending bills ahead of the 30th January funding deadline and averting another government shutdown. Well, like everything else, though, yeah, we'll see. Do you trust these politicians? A package reflects a rare point of bipartisan convergence on top-line funding, even as Republicans and Democrats frame the deal in sharply different political terms. So, you know, they try to say that they're trying to avert a shutdown, but, you know, they could do the complete opposite. You can't trust this man at all. Is he trustworthy? Is there any trust? Do people really trust Esau Edom, or are they getting prepared for war, right? The U.S. is basically not good credit. So it's not a good credit to have anything in U.S. stock bonds. Danish pension fund to sell U.S. treasuries. You know, they want out of it. They're tired of it. They're tired of the Babylonian juice. The U.S. is basically not a good credit because it doesn't have any good credit. And long-term, the U.S. government finances are not sustainable. Andrews Schedule, the chief investment officer, told Bloomberg on Tuesday, which is hilarious because this has been the case for years, if not decades. Amusingly, it was another Dane, Hein Christensen, who pointed out that the emperor is naked 200 years later. Denmark has done it again. So like everything else, though, after Europe has a thing for virtue signaling first, like blowing up all their nuclear power plants without any valid replacement in store, asking questions later, expect many others to follow in Denmark's shoes, only to find out months later that there is no market that is deep or liquid enough to absorb the funds, which completely blowing up the bid ask in the process. Yeah, because they made all their investments in the U.S. You know, by being allied with the U.S., they ain't got nothing left. You know, they took the juicy juice, and it's coming back to bite them. Now, there's a list of untouchables. We know that Rob Reiner was one of those untouchables, but then his son ended his life. Now, this is obviously not what you can hear on the mainstream, but it turns out that he was a child sex trafficker, and that he even raped and abused his own son, and that led to him killing both parents, because the mother allowed it too. He wouldn't do anything about it. Rob Reiner was one of those untouchable child sex traffickers. And Tom Hanks is one of those guys that has not been proven yet, but as you know from the alternative media, he's been exposed. But Tom Hanks is one of those untouchable. You'll never hear about it on the mainstream. You'll never even know that this guy was a pedophile, except if you catch the alternative media, which, like everything else, the Epstein files, which is CIA, Mossad operative, and he has dirt on Tom Hanks that disappears just like Donald Trump disappears, because they have people in their pockets, these Epstein files, right?
Since the Epstein files were dumped in heavily redacted form, one name has vanished from the spotlight. Tom Hanks. No interviews, no public statements, no damage control PR. Just a Hollywood legend, keeping his head down.
Yep.
Praying that the government never opens the vault on the other 99% of what it's still hiding. Unfortunately for Hanks, leaked files, verified shocking and horrific, are circulating on the dark web, revealing that not only did Hanks fly on Epstein's private jet, he and Epstein tossed very young children into the sea when they were finished with them. Discarded like waste. This is urgent information that can't be suppressed any longer, because when the public finally learns the truth about Hanks and Epstein's twisted romance, the consequences won't just expose a Hollywood legend, they'll destroy the myth of who really controls the entertainment.
So they just rape and do everything unthinkable to them, and then they just toss them into the sea.
Locals community to join Aaron Crowley.
So, that's what Esau does.
Vacations with Barack Obama, the man who ordered $65,000 of hot dogs across state lines. The pattern is impossible to ignore.
Is this what's going on with social media, that Oprah and I cannot go on a billionaire's boat to Tahiti with a former president of the United States and not keep it secret, for God's sakes? Is this where we are, Stephen Colbert?
For decades, these connections were dismissed, downplayed and buried. But now the world is waking up, and people are speaking truth to power, like Isaac Cappy, who was killed for his trouble, and the anti-pedophile activist who did this. Not only did Hanks fly on Epstein's jet, according to these files, and not only did he partake in sickening rituals involving young girls with Epstein,
but I made Esau bare, I've uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide.
From a height of 40,000 feet. Do you want to know why 99% of the files haven't come out yet? Because the most senior defense contractor, hint it rhymes with going, commissioned this plane, specifically for the agency. Ask yourself, how did the US military get paramilitary personnel into Laos and Vietnam in Boeing 727s? Care to guess what type of plane Epstein acquired after moving his trafficking operation from Zorro Ranch to Little St. James Island in the US Virgin Islands? A Boeing 727. Leaks, files and testimony reveals that many of the youngest child victims didn't live to tell their story. Their bodies were sent out of the aft ventral air stair of the 727 and into the Caribbean Sea, discarded like waste. The Epstein network was never just about providing teenage girls to world leaders. Don't fall for the mainstream media gatekeeping. The reality is, and we've got plenty of evidence to prove this, Epstein provided whatever the mark wanted. And in Hanks's case, we're talking about very young children. We're also talking about occult rituals and pagan rites with Luciferian influences. We're talking about child sacrifice from 40,000 feet. And about underground stables holding children as young as 5 in horrific conditions.
This particular victim is sending an email to someone saying, sorry this took so long, please let me know if you
Notice that nobody's really untouchable anymore, even though they once were.
I was trafficked beginning at my earliest memory. I do not remember a time that I was not trafficked for sex. According to birth certificate from blank, my biological parents, I do not recognize them as parents, blank and blank, began to sell me for sex in the town of blank. There were many men that were brought to their home to have sex with me. I was taken to many states in the U.S. to sell me. I was forced by threat by blank, comma, and Jeffrey Epstein of being killed, bodily harm, and threats of harming other children if I did not have sex with them and any other people they sold me to. Sold. Remember that word, sold. The rape and sex trafficking with Jeffrey Epstein happened year blank. I was about blank years old at the time. Why would the names of any of these people or locations be redacted? Location alone is not going to identify the victim. The redaction is not long enough for it to be first and last name of the parents, so that wouldn't identify the victim. Anyway, at the time, I was taken to an underground location. I was blindfolded, so I would not know exactly where I was at. It was dark, and when we went through doors, we went downstairs. There was also an elevator in the location. I was kept in a stall. It looked like a horse stall that had short walls on the side so you could see inside. It wasn't really to keep me and the other little girls inside. It was to make
Gene Hackman was his neighbor.
Viewed. Epstein would walk past each girl, including myself,
They
with a
killed
lot of
Gene
men following
Hackman
him, and they would judge
and
us.
his
He told
wife
me I was fat and ugly,
because
so
of
that's what he
the
called me.
fact that they knew.
Rejected. And he said I had to pretend it was him to see if I performed well. What do you think that says? Here's the report from the investigator from Hope for Justice Nashville, summarizing what she said. On blank, investigators received a phone call from blank, who was referred by blank to Hope for Justice. Blank stated she had been sexually trafficked by blank when she was approximately 5 years old, not redacted this time, and again when she was 17. Blank wanted to know if her allegation could be investigated. Blank was not. If you're lying, you don't contact someone and say, hey, can you look into this and make sure I'm telling the truth? It's more like, this happened, here are the details I remember. If you look under his fucking house, you might find a stable.
But they're not looking under his house. Just like they're not releasing unredacted files exposing the predators. Because the governments of almost every Western nation on Earth would collapse. Institutions would collapse, including the Hollywood entertainment system. Isaac Cappy warned us years ago about Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg, and others. But even he didn't know the extent of the barbarism in their circles.
So there you have it, though. And that's just, a little snippet to show you how fucking disgusting Esau is. The pedophiles of the world, man. Especially Amalek. And you know that Tom Hanks is one of those Amalekites who's just never going to see the light of day. Same as Rob Reiner, right? But what happened with Rob Reiner, right? His son, after years of being abused, finally did something about it, We're not saying that everybody who's sex trafficked or whatever should do this, but what we are saying, though, is that Most High does eventually pay back. And Esau's getting a big-time payback. Trump says U.S. will seize Greenland over a peace prize snub. Because like everything else, DJ Trump is very much, claiming to be the man of peace, but is destroying many, right? Venezuelan opposition figure Maria Mercado was awarded the Peace Prize in 2025. She was advocated for the U.S. to sanction and use military force against Venezuela after U.S. military terrorists kidnapped President Maduro. Mercado gifted her Peace Prize medal to Trump. So like everything else, though, she pretty much just handed over her Peace Prize. However, Trump dismissed Mercado as a potential future leader in Venezuela. Trump argued that the U.S. must seize Greenland to protect them from Russia and China, who want them. So like everything else, though, many European countries oppose Trump's peace plan to seize Greenland. It's peace. We're going to take your shit. Trump placed a 10% tariff against 8 European countries that objected to his, it says efforts, but, what do we call it, his schemes. The president said the tariffs will increase if the nations do not drop their opposition. You do as I say, not as I do. EU preparing carrot and stick response to Trump's threats over Greenland. Brussels is considering economic countermeasures if the U.S. imposes the new tariffs. The EU is considering new tariffs against U.S. imports or restricting the access of American companies to the bloc's market in response to President Trump's threat to attack Greenland. The U.S. president has long sought over Denmark's overseas territory, citing concerns of influence of Russia and China in the strategic region. On Saturday, Trump threatened to impose a new 10% tariff against a number of NATO members, including Denmark. So, like everything else, though, Denmark and lots of other countries are planning to hit them back, because tariffs are good. Trump will tell you that tariffs are good. And like everything else, though, there's this fake narrative going around, that Russia and China want it, when they have already publicly stated that they have no ambitions for it. Trump is just giving the delusions because, of course, man, he wants Canada and Greenland. Okay, can you imagine how big it is? Because they already have Alaska, right? That would mean that he would have all of North America, right? Because North America, when you look at it as a huge continent, it includes Greenland. This is what it's really about, is trying to have just as much territory as Russia to go to a nuclear war with Russia. And it will happen in our time. So that's what it is about acquiring more and more, because these missiles are going to be shot off from both sides. and the Edomites are going to destroy each other because it's destined. And then whatever's left, especially Russia and its allies, because they're going to win the nuclear war, well, Yahushua and the angels are also going to destroy the Russians that will remain in the northern parts of the Israeli state, etc. Because, of course, Israel will be returned to its rightful owners, which is Yahushua and the Israelites, and we pray we're part of that elect. But nonetheless, though, this is what's going on. You know, the rhetoric being spewed that Russia and China are trying to acquire Greenland. It's a fake narrative.
Conservative British journalist Piers Morgan has taken a swipe at Trump's Greenland intentions, saying US logic suggests that the UK should buy back its former colony.
Britain should repurchase America. After all, it was ours once, and it would enhance our North Atlantic security. If you don't sell it to us, President Trump, we're going to impose tariffs on the US and any country who supports you in
Holy
resisting
shit.
this very good deal. Fair?
Well, let's cross live now to Glenn Dees, a Norwegian professor of political science, joining us from Oslo. Many thanks for joining us on the programme today. It's very good to see you. So, first of all, I'd like to ask you about Piers Morgan's...
No, it's they're laughing at
way back,
Trump's ass.
for years. But at the same time, does the conservative British journalist raise a valid point here? His post has certainly sparked plenty of debates online.
Well, it's intended as a satirical remark, so one that could go down well with Donald Trump, which fits with their friendship. But it's the point is a fair one to make. That is because Trump has in the past made a comment that just because some Danish boats arrived in Greenland a few hundred years ago doesn't mean that they have any rights for Greenland. So almost framing his arguments in an anti-colonial setting. But of course, the objective here by the United States is to take over Greenland, not to liberate it, which makes it a flawed one. But no, I think he's trying to point out to Donald Trump some of the absurdity in terms of what is currently being done.
I mean, while a French member of the European Parliament, Valérie Hay, she says Europe should not, quote, succumb to Trump's blackmail, and she claims the EU has an economic nuclear weapon. She says the ability to impose punitive tariffs or even ban US companies from the European market. I mean, just how realistic are these options, and are they likely to deter Trump?
Well, I think that's the path to go down, because Trump is the president of low-hanging fruit. He would like to get something, a lot, for very little investment. You see this even when he uses force, be it from Venezuela to Iran. He would like to make it short and not that expensive, but try to get something big out of it. So I think what he wants to do is just threaten Europeans, so they will sell Greenland to him, and then it will be over with, and then everyone has an interest in preserving the relationship. I think what the Europeans should do if they want to keep Greenland, that is the Danes, is to threaten major consequences, because this is essentially what makes Trump back off. But I don't think it's realistic. And furthermore, the Europeans have made themselves way too dependent on the United States. What you should do in a multipolar world is diversify your ties, that is both security and economic. The Europeans have done the exact opposite. In the desperation to keep the US present in Europe after the Cold War, they made themselves excessively dependent. They made an enemy out of Russia, and for many reasons they maintained the division of Europe, which now means that their security is completely dependent on the United States. Same in the economic sphere. They should have diversified. They should have closer ties with Russia, China, India, many other countries. But instead they followed America's demands to essentially begin to cut themselves off from the centers of power and make the EU into...
That they should eat her flesh and then burn her with fire, so you can see where this is at. I mean, this prophecy is speaking big time. They shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, meaning that, yeah, they were once apart. They were an alliance, but now they're going to turn their weapons against, because they know it's not panning out the way that they plan. Trump refuses to rule out military option for Greenland. Further ratcheting up tensions over the issue, Trump additionally said he no longer felt obligation to think purely of peace in regard to Greenland. According to a letter he penned to Norwegian Prime Minister, obtained by Bloomberg, the president went on to blame the Nordic state for failing to award him with the Nobel Peace Prize. Right. Because he's a man of war, you know. But he's a man of peace. You know, the man of peace. By peace shall destroy many, right? Adding that the world is not secure unless we have complete and total control over Greenland. After Trump vowed to impose a 10% tariff against 8 European states opposed, the UK, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the Netherlands, and Finland, the nations in question deployed a small contingent of troops to the territory for a round of military drills on Monday, Copenhagen reportedly sent additional forces to Greenland, which around 100 stationed in the capital city of Nuuk, and a similar number deployed to the Kanger, looks like a town far from Greenland's west coast. The U.S. president insisted that Greenland is vital to American national security, claiming that without evidence that Russia and China seek to control the territory, which we already know that's utter rhetoric, as the previous video played. Trump threatens 200% wine tariffs against France to push Macron to join the Gaza war. Well, you either join this Gaza peace plan and join us with phase 2, because phase 1 has done so fucking great. It's the fucking greatest. It's the fucking greatest plan, ever. Israeli state's going to annex Palestine, and well, we're going to make lots and lots of money, because he's always been a power-hungry devil, And Roger Waters even recently went on to criticize him. He's getting a lot of flack over it, but he went on to say that there was nothing ever good about Donald Trump. And I remember this guy fucking back in the 80s. He was a yuppie motherfucker, and nobody fucking liked him. Man, one of my favorite artists from the streets of New York, David Peel, did quite a few songs about it called the Yuppie Ghetto, because Trump also had shut down the access to Central Park and wanted full control over Central Park, and waged war against those that may want to stay, imposed curfews on the park, when Central Park was free, it was free to live. And well, nonetheless, though, he always had a hate for homeless or for the poor, even back then. So he was always a devil to begin with, and I can remember that, because quite simply put, I seen him for what he was, back then, even. U.S. President Trump lashed out at French President Macron over his refusal to join the Board of Peace for Gaza, which is really a war against Gaza. So like everything else, though, it's an extension of Israeli occupation, and everybody knows it's about that. He stressed the occupation of Gaza is unlawful under international law, and that both the occupation and genocide breached the highest binding norms of international law. No colonial edict by Trump, no ultra values resolution of the Security Council, and no agreement by the occupied Palestinian Authority can legitimize the occupation or the war, he went on to say, right? So, like everything else, though, Macron and those with him are against his plan, for, so-called peace plan, which is really a war plan. Because at the end of the day, they're forcing Palestinians to leave that land. Trump tells Europe to focus on Ukraine instead of Greenland. Yeah, stay focused on Ukraine. Well, I thought he wanted to end this war. He was going to end that war in, what did he say? In a day. Within hours. Within hours, he said. European leaders should focus on Ukraine rather than efforts to acquire Greenland. Rather than his ambitions to acquire Greenland, right? President Trump told NBC on Monday. In a phone call with the news outlet, he criticized European leaders for resisting his threats to acquire Greenland, which argues is necessary. Europe ought to focus on the war with Russia and Ukraine because, frankly, you see what that's gotten them, Trump said, which he's mocking at him. That's why Europe should focus on it, not Greenland, so like everything else, but he was going to end that war, remember? He would end it within hours, he talks so much shit. You ever seen a guy talk more shit? And this is coming from the Board of Peace. Trump is running Gaza and the world like a mafia boss. Well, yeah, but the real mafia boss is Satan Yahoo. This guy just happens to work for him. But, like everything else, though, you got to have gangsters, right? To invite the same cast of characters which allows the Israeli state to expand to the point at which Gaza exploded and expect them to end the conflict is more than just insane. It's criminal. Well, like everything else, though, hey, man, it is a motley crew. And Babylon the Great and the Israeli state are that motley crew. The Board of Peace is supported by a founding executive board, which stacked full of people who denied the genocide is taking place, including the U.S. Secretary of State Rubio and envoy Witkoff, Trump's son-in-law, Kushner, as well as people like Rowland, Wall Street founder who intimidated U.S. campuses into banning demonstrations in support of Palestine. They are united, too, by a profound lack of knowledge about West Asia. One person on the executive board has experience of the region. If you call invading Iraq and unleashing a devastating 7-year civil war experience, is Britain's own Tony Blair, which these are all people that are on board. You know? So like everything else, though, you know, we know that Iraq was totally dismantled and thrown out, and that's what they've been doing with Gaza, you know, and they've done it to Syria, they've done it to Libya, you know. Yeah, intervention's good. Yeah, this is peace. You know, those are such peaceful places to be. You know, with Al Qaeda running Syria, and then you got you know, terror groups that could have their way in Iraq. You know, anytime they want them to reform, oh well, we got to stay here because we're fighting ISIS. You know, it's thievery, it's fuckery, but Esau's fucking good at it. UNRWA chief calls Israeli raid against East Jerusalem headquarters deliberate defiance of international law. Well, no shit. But who controls the laws? You see, it's a motley crew. It's you know, you can't even you know, do anything about it because guess who heads that? The U.S. And you already know what kind of terrorist the U.S. is. I mean, the U.S. is the greatest of the terrorists. So, like everything else, you know. Earlier this morning, Israeli terrorists stormed the UNRWA headquarters in East Jerusalem. Bulldozers entered the compound and began demolishing buildings inside it under the watch of lawmakers as a member of the government, describing the attack as an unprecedented attack against the UN agency and its premises. See, they don't even answer to the UN. They are above all that. It's a motley crew. Over 470 terrorists, riot ringleaders, captured multiple Iranian provinces. So like everything else, though, they know who's responsible for it. It was a failed coup. It wasn't even going to be gone in with a full coup, because most people in Iran, they might detest some of the things, but they are in support of their government doing something about it, see? That's just it. So they couldn't dismantle it. Iranian security and intelligence forces captured more than 470 individuals in 3 provinces identified as key figures behind the recent wave of violent unrest and terrorist activities linked to foreign-backed networks. According to official statements, detainees were involved in the killing of several security personnel and civilians, setting fire to mosques, public service facilities, and buses, as well as attacks against military and law enforcement centers. They seized items from the group, including several bulletproof vests, Kalashnikov rifles, hunting weapons, Winchester rifles, and various cold weapons such as daggers, swords, brass knuckles, tactical knives, crossbows, and chains. Evidence indicated that some of the individuals were tied to hostile movements and terrorist organizations with links overseas. Others identified as members of violent criminal gangs actively taking part in the unrest alongside their associates, because like everything else, though, they were being well armed and paid for. But you knew that Iran would eventually, you know, that pretty much that they would gain control of it because it was a failed attempt. But Esau will still keep coming for them. Eastern Syria fight and reshapes oil map, returns fields to the state. Well, I think that the U.S. is abandoning the SDF and the Kurds once again, because they only were using them long enough to resist Bashar al-Assad and keep control of the oil. But they already have a deal with the new Syrian government because, hey, they're butt buddies, right? Al Jelani, and Donald Trump fucked each other in the ass and, kissed, not so long ago, right? They're all pedophiles and they're all child traffickers and they're all terrorists. And they love each other. They love that butt, As remember, Trump was, smelling colognes with them. So they have their deal. They have their deal with the new Syrian government, the interim government, and so they don't need the Kurds anymore, so fuck them. SDF has to become part of it, and even better, I'll tell them that. Syrian state regains control over large parts of the east, followed by the expulsion of the Syrian Democratic Forces. Has re-emerged as a central issue in discussions over economic recovery. Well, they still got to keep it a little bit chaotic as an excuse to stay in there. Since the discovery of major oil fields in the 1960s, eastern Syria has been central to the country's energy sector, with Deir ez-Zor, Hasaka, and Raqqa accounting for most national production. Before the war, Syria produced an average of about 380,000 barrels per day, largely from fields such as Al Omar, Al Tank, Al Jafra, and Al Taim in Deir ez-Zor, as well as Rumaon and El Sudaida in Hasaka. Oil revenues covered a significant share of domestic consumption, supported electricity generation and industry, and provided a major source of income for the state. The sector also underpinned transport, logistics, and energy-related industries. And like everything else, though, now that they got what they want. And remember, a lot of this shit was already looted and sent into Iraq, where the U.S. controls as well. So they already they used them for what they needed them for. And so, like everything else, though, they have a deal. They have a deal now. And, of course, they're going to give it back to ISIS-run Syria, or should I say Al-Qaeda or Hayat al-Sham, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Esau has a deal with them, and, but he's a man of peace. Remember, by peace shall destroy many. So, by peace, he's, it's just fucking hilarious how many people are still charmed by him, but that's what the city of confusion is, The city of confusion is broken down, and like everything else, though, we can see that, all roads are leading to the return of Yahweh Shai. And like everything else, though, we're in that time now. So, like everything else, though, this has also been deemed the year of apostasy and of sellouts. So, well, we could take a look at everything that's going on, and we definitely know that insurrections are happening as well. The threat of the Insurrection Act being used. And so, yeah, we pray that the Most High, send Yahweh Shai very soon to deliver us from this place. And that's why we make sure our call for election is sure. And as he said about the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" The end of the age of Esau Edom, the end of his rulership. And Yahweh Shai answered them, "See that no one leads you astray, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the anointed, and they will lead many astray." That is talking about apostates, and sellouts. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. And that's what we're hearing right now. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. So there's still more to come. Most of all, though, the impending MOTB. For nation will rise against nation, civil unrest, etc., insurrection, and kingdom against kingdom. Again, talking about insurrections, civil unrest. And there will be famines and earthquakes in various places, as you know. That happens quite a lot. All these are the beginning of birth pains. So, as it's continuing to fall, right? Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death. Now, this is going to happen to many that will not conform to the New World Order, that refuse to take the impending MOTB. And you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another, because they're all going to be, everyone's going to be against their neighbor, as it tells you in Isaiah 19 as well, and Yahushua is re-emphasizing this here. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And that's why this year has been deemed the year of apostasy and of sellouts. Because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. So like everything else though, we see that it's waxing worse, and that, ain't no love amongst thieves, because Esau is the thief, so there's no respect amongst thieves, right? But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And 2/3 of our people are just as bad as the Edomites, because they don't want to give up Esau. Esau's their friend, even though he's not much of a friend. They hate us. They hate us for telling the truth about him. They get mad when we teach, the truth. No, the white man can make it. Again, a year of apostates and sellouts. So we're going to hear more and more of it before the return of Yahushua. So hopefully all this has been edifying. For that I want to say, Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahushua, Ba'ashem Rekakadash, Wa Abal Babal. Brakatum to Yehovah elect. Shalom.